Hi, this is Brent with Sample Tools by CR2. In this video, we're going to be exploring how to process vocals for house tracks. For the purposes of this video, I'm using the demo track that comes included in the Deep House Volume 1 bundle from Sample Tools by CR2. Let's have a listen to the track. I've got 3 different vocals here. I've got a double of a background vocal ad-lib, and then I've got the main lead line. So let's take a listen. Cool, so let's dive in and have a look at how I process these vocals. So they're all grouped and going to the same bus. So I have the ad-libs and the vocal main going to the same bus. And let's take a look at the effects chain that we've built here. So if I go into the group channel here, the first thing in the effects chain, if we slide along, is actually auto-tune. So I'm using auto-tune just to lock the actual tuning of all of the individual words on the ad-libs and the lead. So I've got them in a low male setting, B flat minor, which is the key, and I've got them fully cranked at 100% retune speed. So that means that immediately the vocals will latch on to the correct notes. Followed on by that, I've got just a really simple high pass filter, basically getting rid of any of the low end from 100 Hz with a pretty gradual slope. I don't want it to be too dramatic just because the ad-libs have got quite a bit of the sort of low end information. So that's really quite basic. When things start to get interesting is with the processing that happens after here. So the first thing I've got is this Arturia 1176, and I like to start with the preset and then tweak it to my liking just to get a good starting base. So I use this vocal pop preset, and I have it on a very fast attack and fast release, and this gets a really snappy sound from the vocal and it helps it stand out and really cut through in the mix. And the controls on 1176s are back to front, so fast and on the release and the attack is actually all the way around the clockwise here, so not at 1. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like on all of these. So I'll turn off the rest of the processing. When I think about you, you know you're always on my mind. Even though you ain't got the time, you know you're always on my mind. So it's just helping them stand out a bit there, and I'm using an 8:1 ratio. I could have gone maybe higher, 12:1 ratio in probably the choruses, but for this part of the production, this was perfect. And then the only thing I did last was just continue to high pass for any more along the signal chain, just so there's no any masking issues down below sort of 60 Hz. Moving on, the next thing to give it sort of that upwards compression, sheen, polish is a little bit of OTT. I've just left it on everything default and dial it in, but be careful with this because it can introduce some phasing if you really crank it. So anywhere sort of up to about 30-40% should be okay. The following thing in the chain is the Alter Boy, and these 2 plugins here are probably doing the most work out of everything in this preset. So the Alter Boy is mainly changing the vocal formant, and I'm also using it for a little bit of drive as well. Let's have a listen. When I think about you, you know you're always on my mind. Even though you ain't got the time. So we could go further with the formant, but it really just changes the sound of the throat of the vocal. You can also do this with other plugins like the Antares Autotune one has it built in as well, but I just really like the Alter Boy's workflow. When I think about you, you know you're always on my mind. Then we're running into some saturator from the Ableton stock saturator. You could use anything you like here. It could be even a preamp. And I'm just using this to drive the vocal. And the main reason for this is just to increase the harmonics across the frequency range so that they cut through a little bit better. I'm backing off the output a lot because this does drive the vocal quite a lot. So let's have a listen to With and Without.
When I think about you, you know you're always on my mind. Even though you ain't got the time, you know you're always on my mind.
So you can hear it gives it a little bit more grittiness, and it also warms up the vocal as well. So that's a really nice thing to have on a vocal chain to make it sound a bit more analog. Then moving along, this next thing here is something that I personally prefer to use over just additive EQ. So this is an exciter. You could do something similar to this with other plugins, but I find the Neutron exciter is a really, really good plugin. What this does is it basically amplifies certain frequencies with a certain type of processing. So you can go between tube, warm, retro, and tape. They all have a very distinct sound. And this really helps the vocal clarity in the mix. Well, you'll notice a big change here.
When I think about you, you know you're always on my mind. Even though you ain't got the time, you know you're always on my mind.
So I've got this at full mix and on clear mode, and I'm using the tube setting here at an 11:1% ratio, and it's cleaning up the low end and it's really polishing the top, but it doesn't make it too harsh. The only thing I do to counteract that is introduce some soothe. Now, the only thing I'd say about soothe is it's extremely CPU intensive, as you can see. So what we have here is I'm using Soothe 2 basically just to tame the clickiness and a little bit of the de-essing that we get coming on. We could do this with something like Isotope RX, but Soothe does do a really good job of taming those sort of AK clicky frequencies.
When I think about you,
Put it in Delta. That's what it's reducing. And stuff like that really gets picked up on headphones. And the last thing in the chain is just a little bit of Valhalla Vintage Verb. And with this, I'm using a very small decay, and the mix is only on quarter with a relatively short pre-delay, and I'm high passing and low passing, so this reverb is mainly mid-range focused. So let's have a listen.
when I think about you, you know you're always on my mind. Even though you ain't got the time, you know you're always on my mind.
So it's quite a big, and there's a lot of vocals going on in the vocal chain, but really there's nothing too intricate here. It's mainly just manipulation of the sound, the formant, and processing it to make it sound polished and stand out against this pretty bass heavy dominant track. So let's hear it once more in context.